Stop scrolling for a second, because what I'm about to tell you will completely change the way you understand attraction. And I promise you've never heard this before. Most men think it's about looks, money, or status. That's what insecure men chase. But here's the truth. Younger women don't go crazy for a man just because he is older. They go crazy for men who operate on a completely different level. Men who have mastered things that almost no one talks about, things most men will never understand, things that make them unforgettable. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what these men do that turns attraction into obsession. You'll learn why emotional stability is far more powerful than charm, why having direction and purpose is magnetic, and why self-worth that doesn't depend on validation instantly separates a man from every other option in the room. You'll discover why challenging her mind without controlling her makes her respect you, desire you, and even think about you when you're not there. And most importantly, you'll see why selectivity, the ability to hold standards without arrogance, is the single most powerful tool to command attention, admiration, and attraction from a younger woman. If you think you already know how attraction works, you're wrong. This isn't about tricks, manipulation, or shallow tactics that fade in weeks. This is deep psychology, human behavior, and rare masculine energy that almost no one understands. And once you grasp it, your life changes. So I need you to do one thing. Watch this video all the way to the end. Pay attention. Absorb these principles, because what you're about to learn will not only make younger women notice you, it will make them think about you differently, respect you deeply, and pull towards you in ways you've never experienced. Your chance to step into this level of presence starts now. Don't blink, because what comes next will change everything. Let's start by confronting one of the biggest misconceptions most men have about attraction. They believe that being noticed, being chased, or being emotionally reactive will somehow make a woman more interested in them. That's the trap. That's the illusion that keeps so many men stuck in a cycle of frustration. The truth is far more profound, and it's something most people never talk about. Younger women, especially, are not drawn to drama or emotional volatility. They are drawn to presence. They are drawn to a man who has mastered the ability to remain steady, calm, and grounded, no matter what is happening around him. Emotional stability is not the absence of emotion. It is not coldness, nor is it detachment. A man who is emotionally stable feels deeply, but he doesn't allow external events to dictate his internal state. He listens without overreacting, he responds without urgency, and he observes without needing immediate gratification. Most younger men confuse reaction with engagement. They believe that showing intense emotion, whether frustration, excitement, or jealousy, signals passion. What it really signals is insecurity. When a man reacts impulsively, he exposes the cracks in his confidence, and that is precisely what pushes women away. When a younger woman encounters an older man who doesn't react like the others, something profound happens on a subconscious level. She notices it immediately, even if she can't articulate it. Her mind registers a sense of safety, a sense of consistency she's rarely experienced. Think about it. So many people her age live in a world of emotional turbulence. Friendships are unstable, relationships are fleeting, attention is conditional. And then comes a man whose emotional state is anchored, whose presence feels like a calm center in the chaos. That contrast is magnetic, that contrast is rare, and rarity is irresistible. The science behind this is fascinating. Human brains are wired to seek stability in social and romantic interactions. We are attracted to people who provide a sense of security because it triggers the release of dopamine in a way that feels safe yet exciting. When she interacts with a man who remains unshaken, her nervous system relaxes around him, and yet there is a tension that stimulates curiosity. She is drawn into him, not because of the words he says, but because of the energy he carries. Emotional stability communicates strength without aggression, confidence without arrogance, and control without domination. Most men make the mistake of trying to force attraction through emotion. They overtext, they overreact, they apologize for minor issues, they try to fix situations that don't need fixing. A younger woman senses this immediately, and it diminishes respect. She starts to perceive the man as needy, dependent, and unreliable. But the older man who has cultivated emotional stability does the opposite. He observes, he assesses, and he responds in a way that reflects control over his own state. If she is upset, he listens first. If she withdraws, he doesn't chase. If she challenges him, he doesn't crumble. That kind of presence is magnetic because it signals maturity, wisdom, and self-possession, qualities that cannot be faked and cannot be taught overnight. Emotional stability also amplifies attraction because it creates a psychological pull that younger men cannot replicate. When she is around men who are reactive, she experiences highs and lows, but those interactions feel exhausting over time. She begins to crave the consistency she rarely encounters. The older man, by contrast, doesn't create drama. He doesn't manipulate. He doesn't need to be validated. And paradoxically, this calm authority invites her investment. She starts to seek his attention because it feels earned, not demanded. She starts to value his presence because it feels rare, and rarity in human psychology is synonymous with worth. Here's a critical point that is often misunderstood. Emotional stability is not a passive quality, it is active. It requires vigilance over one's own mind, discipline over one's own impulses, and clarity about one's own values. It requires the ability to pause before responding, to observe before judging, and to feel without overreacting. It requires the courage to stand firm in your own reality while allowing another person to experience theirs. That is what separates men who are truly magnetic from those who simply think they are. Stability is not a mask. It is an internal architecture built over years of self-awareness, reflection, and disciplined living. When a younger woman experiences this, her attraction shifts from surface-level curiosity to something deeper, almost primal. She begins to notice patterns that others miss. She notices that he doesn't need her attention to feel validated. She notices that he isn't seeking control or dominance. She notices that he remains steady, even when she tests him emotionally. And this creates a sense of tension, polarity, and fascination that is impossible to manufacture. It is drawn from his mastery over himself, not from tricks or manipulation. The final, undeniable truth is this: emotional stability is the foundation upon which all other forms of attraction are built. Without it, direction, confidence, intellectual challenge, and selectivity cannot reach their full power. She may be momentarily intrigued by other qualities, but she will never feel the magnetic pull that comes from a man who has truly mastered his internal state. Emotional stability is rare. Emotional stability is valuable. Emotional stability is unforgettable. So the question you must ask yourself is simple. Are you a man whose emotional state depends on external validation, or are you a man who has built an unshakable center within himself? Are you reacting to the world, or are you shaping your presence in it? Because the moment you embody emotional stability, you don't need to chase attention. You don't need to perform. You don't need to impress. She will notice. She will respect. And she will be drawn in ways you have never experienced. Were Your actions are temporary, but your presence is permanent. Build the foundation of your internal stability, and everything else, respect, attraction, influence, follows naturally, because a man who has mastered himself is not only noticed, he is unforgettable. Let's be honest with ourselves for a moment. Most men think attraction eye. It's about showing ambition. They believe that having money, a car, or status is enough to make a younger woman interested. But ambition alone is hollow. Ambition without direction is like a ship without a rudder. It may move, it may appear busy, but it lacks purpose. A younger woman can sense this immediately. She doesn't just want a man who is busy. She wants a man who is intentional. She wants a man whose life is aligned with a mission, whose actions are guided by clarity, and whose presence communicates that he is moving forward with meaning. Direction is a rare quality, and that's why it is so magnetic. Most men her age, or even men older than her, live their lives reactively. They chase what is easy, what is immediate, what gives them short-term satisfaction. They jump from one project to another, from one relationship to another, from one momentary thrill to the next. Their lives are noisy, scattered, and unfocused. And when a younger woman encounters a man who is intentional, who has already chosen his path and is moving with precision toward it, she notices immediately. She doesn't just see ambition, she sees mastery of self. She sees a man whose energy is fully aligned with his purpose. That alignment is magnetic. That alignment signals to her, consciously and subconsciously, that this man is capable of stability, leadership, and long-term commitment, qualities she instinctively values. A man with direction does not revolve his life around her. He does not make her the center of his universe, and he does not rely on her approval to feel validated. This distinction is crucial. Younger men, especially those who are reactive, tend to seek validation constantly. They mirror the desires of the women they are interested in. They bend, they adjust, they chase. And that chasing, even when disguised as attention, undermines attraction. But a man with direction has Arya build a life he values. He invites her to step into that life rather than attempting to build his life around her presence. That subtle difference shifts the dynamic entirely. She does not feel suffocated. She feels honored. She does not feel pressured. She feels chosen. The psychology behind this is straightforward, yet profound. Humans are drawn to people whose actions are consistent, intentional, and self-directed. When a man has direction, it signals competence and vision, qualities that are deeply attractive, but beyond competence. It signals that he has a sense of his own identity and values. He is not easily swayed by the opinions or moods of others, and he does not act out of fear of loss or rejection. This stability in action, this clarity of vision, creates a gravitational pull. She feels drawn in not just because of what he has accomplished, but because of what he is becoming, and because she senses that aligning with him may expand her own potential. Direction is also about energy. A man who is moving with purpose carries a type of energy that is hard to ignore. His body language, tone of voice, and the decisions he makes all reflect focus and clarity. He speaks less, but when he does, his words carry weight. He prioritizes what matters, and he doesn't waste time on trivial pursuits. That energy is contagious. She feels it when she is around him. She feels the difference between a man who drifts and a man who drives. She feels the excitement, the security, and the sense of inevitability that comes from someone who knows exactly where he is going. But here is what most men fail to understand. Direction cannot be faked. You cannot simply act like you have a plan or pretend to be focused. It must be built through experience, discipline, and deliberate choice. Direction comes from understanding your priorities, setting meaningful goals, and taking conscious tent action toward them. It comes from building a life that you respect, that you are proud of, and that you would continue to pursue even if no one else noticed. When a younger woman encounters a man like this, she perceives the integrity behind his actions. She sees that he is not performing for attention or approval. She sees that he is living intentionally, and that rare authenticity sparks fascination, admiration, and desire. Another critical aspect of direction is emotional independence. A man with purpose is not driven by the need to fill voids in his life with someone else's presence. He doesn't rely on external validation to feel successful or worthy. This independence amplifies attraction because it creates a subtle tension. She senses that she is not necessary for him, and yet she is deeply wanted. That paradox is irresistible. It allows her to step into his life freely, without pressure, and encourages her to invest emotionally because she perceives that she is being chosen, not chased. Direction also communicates resilience. A man with purpose has already faced obstacles, learned from failures, and adjusted his course without losing momentum. He does not crumble under pressure, nor does he deviate from his path due to fleeting distractions. That resilience is compelling. Younger women, who may be accustomed to inconsistency in their peers, are instinctively drawn to the stability and reliability inherent in a man who moves through life with clear direction. She senses that she can trust him, that he will not abandon his principles, and that he has the capacity to lead and protect, not just physically, but in thought, in decision-making, and in life vision. In the end, purpose and direction are more than just qualities. They are signals of value. They show that a man has invested in himself, that he understands his own worth, and that he has the discipline to follow through on his commitments. That level of mastery is rare, and that rarity is magnetic. A younger woman does not simply go crazy for ambition. She goes crazy for intentionality, for clarity, for a man who is moving through life with power, precision, and purpose. So ask yourself, are you a man who drifts from one thing to another, hoping for validation and approval? Or are you a man whose actions are deliberate, whose life has direction, and whose energy commands respect? Because when you align your actions with purpose, you don't need to chase attention. You don't need to perform. You don't need to manipulate. She will notice. She will respect, and she will be drawn to a man whose life moves with meaning. Your direction is your presence. Build it, own it, and let it speak louder than words ever could. Let's address a truth most men either ignore or refuse to see. Too many older men approach younger women seeking validation. They crave attention, compliments, and admiration, hoping that a woman's youth or approval will somehow confirm their worth. This is a trap, and it is fatal to real attraction. A younger woman can sense this immediately. She knows when a man's confidence depends on her validation, when his ego is fragile, when his sense of self is contingent on her reaction. And when she senses that, the attraction evaporates almost instantly. The older man who captivates a younger woman understands a simple principle: true self-worth is internal. It is not granted by anyone else. It is not measured by attention, admiration, or fleeting desire. He does not need a woman to feel accomplished, powerful, or desirable. He is secure in who he is, in what he represents, and in the life he has built. This security is magnetic, not because it is ostentatious, but because it communicates stability, confidence, and authenticity, qualities that younger women instinctively recognize and crave. Most men, When they approach a younger woman, act from a place of need. They seek reassurance that they still have it, that they are still attractive, still relevant, still powerful. They overtext, they overcompensate, they try to impress. They may dress well, they may show status, but all of this is superficial if it is driven by insecurity. In contrast, a man with genuine self-worth does not seek permission to exist. He does not chase approval. He does not inflate himself artificially. He moves through life with a quiet confidence that does not require constant confirmation. And that difference is electric. That difference is noticed immediately. Self-worth without validation is also about energy. When a man is secure in himself, his energy changes the way he is perceived. He does not fidget for attention. He does not overcompensate for his perceived shortcomings. He does not allow a woman's mood to dictate his state. Instead, he projects a presence that is consistent, stable, and grounded. She may challenge him, tease him, withdraw, or flirt, and his response will always reflect composure and clarity. That presence creates tension in the most positive sense. It makes her want to step in, to engage, to be part of his world, not because he demands it, but because his confidence invites it. Let's examine this psychologically. Human attraction is deeply tied to perception of power and independence. When a man's sense of worth depends on external approval, he signals dependence and insecurity. That dependence creates pressure, and pressure diminishes desire. Conversely, when a man is grounded in his self-worth, he signals strength, autonomy, and control. That signal is compelling. It communicates that he can protect, that he can provide stability, that he cooperates from a place of integrity. Younger women, whether consciously or subconsciously, respond to that signal because it contrasts sharply with the instability they experience in men their own age. Another critical factor is authenticity. A man who relies on validation often fakes it. He may act confident, but the performance is shallow. He may dress a certain way, speak in a certain tone, or attempt humor, but these are all compensations for insecurity. The difference with a man grounded in self-worth is stark. He does not perform. He does not over-explain. He does not exaggerate. He simply exists as himself. And that authenticity is rare. The human mind is wired to detect truth beneath surface appearances. When she senses that a man is genuinely secure in himself, her interest shifts from casual curiosity to deeper fascination. She begins to respect him not because of what he says, but because of who he is. Self-worth without validation also changes the dynamic of desire in a subtle but powerful way. When she notices that he does not need her admiration, that he does not chase, that he is not swayed by her approval, she begins to invest more of herself. Why? Because human beings value what is not easily attainable. Scarcity creates intrigue, but the real scarcity comes from self-mastery, not manipulation. He is not playing games, he is simply aligned with himself. That alignment naturally attracts her curiosity, attention, and investment. She begins to think about him when he is not around. She begins to feel a pull that cannot be explained by looks or status alone. There is also an element of freedom in this principle. When a man does not rely on external validation, he allows the younger woman to experience attraction freely. She does not feel pressured to perform, to prove herself, or to reassure him. She can be herself, and paradoxically, this freedom intensifies desire. When she feels she is not being judged, she feels more drawn. She feels a connection that goes beyond superficial attraction. It becomes psychological, emotional, and even primal. But let me be clear. Self-worth without validation is not arrogance. It is not entitlement. It is not being dismissive or cold. A man with genuine self-worth is approachable, kind, and present. He values her as a person, not as a tool to inflate his ego. He compliments without needing reciprocation. He engages without dependence. He enjoys without attachment. That balance between appreciation and independence is rare, and it is unforgettable. The final truth is this: self-worth without validation is the foundation of magnetic attraction. Emotional stability, direction, intellectual challenge, and selectivity all build upon it. Without it, the rest may appear attractive superficially, but it will never create the intensity, fascination, and respect that define a deeper, lasting attraction. She may flirt, she may admire, she may engage briefly, but without this core, it will always be fleeting. So ask yourself, do you seek approval from her presence, her attention, her youth? Or are you secure enough in yourself that you can exist fully, regardless of her reaction? Because the moment you embody genuine self-worth, you no longer need to chase attention. You no longer need to perform or impress. She will notice, she will respect, and she will be drawn to a man whose value is not given. It is inherent. Your worth is not negotiable. Build it, own it, and let it radiate naturally. When you do, you don't just attract attention, you command respect and create desire that cannot be ignored. Let's talk about a quality that most men completely overlook when it comes to attraction. They think it's about charm, humor, or even confidence alone, but there's something far deeper that makes a younger woman stop, notice, and become intensely drawn to a man: the ability to challenge her mind without ever trying to control her. This is subtle, powerful, and almost impossible to fake. It is the kind of presence that keeps her thinking about you long after the conversation has ended. The kind of presence that elevates you from being just another option to someone unforgettable. Challenging her mind does not mean arguing for the sake of winning. It does not mean dominating her opinions or belittling her ideas. Many men make the mistake of thinking that proving superiority will create attraction. The opposite happens. When a man tries to control her thoughts, dismiss her perspective, or constantly assert dominance, he triggers resistance, frustration, and disengagement. She may appear interested initially, but deep down, her respect diminishes. True attraction, the kind that makes her think about you late at night and talk about you to her friends, comes from expanding her perspective, not shrinking it. An older man who has mastered this understands the balance between firmness and openness. He introduces ideas she may not have considered, questions assumptions in ways that inspire reflection, and communicates with clarity and calm. He does not correct to assert authority. He corrects to elevate the conversation, to stretch her mind, and to create a space where growth feels natural. This is different from control. Control is reactive. Control is fear-based. Control seeks to manipulate. Intellectual challenge, on the other hand, is proactive. It is a demonstration of self-mastery, discipline, and vision, and it creates fascination because she senses that you operate from a different plane of thought than most men she encounters. The psychology behind this is fascinating. Human brains are wired to respond to novelty, depth, and stimulation that challenges existing patterns of thinking. When a younger woman experiences a man who can engage her intellectually without threatening her autonomy, her brain releases subtle cues of interest, curiosity, and attraction. She begins to associate him with growth, with energy, and with expansion. She begins to respect him on levels beyond surface appearance. This is why men who rely purely on physical presence or charm are often forgotten over time. Physical attraction fades, Charm can be imitated, but the ability to elevate a woman's mind, to create emotional and intellectual resonance, is rare, and rarity fuels desire. Think about the interactions she experiences with her peers. Many men her age either compete with her, try to impress her, or react emotionally to minor challenges. Their conversations may be loud, impulsive, or shallow. They often lack depth, perspective, and consistency. And then she meets a man who does the opposite. He listens carefully, responds thoughtfully, and frames his insights in a way that expands her understanding. He may challenge her assumptions, but he does it with respect, calmness, and patience. He does not seek to control her reaction. He seeks to inspire reflection. That subtle difference creates tension that is not toxic, but magnetic. It is the polarity that fuels curiosity and desire. Another element to understand is that intellectual challenge without control creates freedom. She is free to disagree, free to explore her thoughts, free to express herself without fear of judgment or backlash. Yet she feels compelled to stay engaged because the experience is enriching. Most men unknowingly create pressure. They dominate, they argue to win, they insist on validation. That pressure repels. A man who challenges without controlling invites. He opens doors instead of closing them. He stretches her without binding her, and this dynamic is powerful because it is rare. Most women are accustomed to being underestimated, overlooked, are controlled by the men they encounter. When she meets someone who operates differently, it sparks fascination and deep respect simultaneously. It's also important to note that this skill is tied closely to self-mastery. A man cannot challenge effectively if he is insecure, reactive, or emotionally unstable. Challenging without control requires clarity, patience, and discipline. It requires the ability to pause, think, and respond intentionally. It requires the courage to hold your ground without imposing it on someone else. That combination of strength and restraint communicates power, presence, and sophistication. She senses it intuitively, and it triggers attraction because she recognizes qualities in him that most men cannot emulate. Many men fail because they confuse debate with domination. They mistake control for influence. They believe that winning a conversation, asserting superiority, or forcing agreement will increase attraction. The exact opposite occurs. Influence emerges when you operate from alignment, calm authority, and intellectual integrity. She may disagree with you, she may test your ideas, she may even challenge your perspective, but the key is that you remain grounded, composed, and unwavering. That grounded presence paired with mental stimulation creates a pull that is irresistible. It is the subtle tension between curiosity and respect, between challenge and safety, that draws her in deeply. And here is the most shocking truth. This attraction is psychological, emotional, and even subconscious. It is not something she can articulate immediately. She may not even understand why she is drawn to you. She simply feels compelled to engage, to reflect, and to invest in the interaction because it stimulates her mind in ways that are rare and meaningful. You are no longer just another man, you become a reference point, a standard, and a benchmark for how a thoughtful, intentional man operates. So ask yourself, are you a man who debates to dominate or a man who engages to elevate? Are you seeking to control her reaction or are you challenging her mind in a way that inspires respect and curiosity? Because the moment you master this skill, you stop chasing attraction, you stop performing, you stop needing approval. She will notice, she will respect, and she will be drawn to a man whose presence stretches her mind, nurtures her growth, and sparks fascination unlike anything she has experienced before. True attraction is not given, it is earned. Challenge without control, elevate without dominance, engage without desperation. That is the energy that makes a younger woman captivated, invested, and deeply intrigued. And once you embody it, you are no longer just noticed, you are unforgettable. Let's close this conversation with one of the most misunderstood truths about attraction, and perhaps the most shocking for many men. The younger woman who is deeply drawn to an older man does not go crazy because he is always available. She goes crazy because he is selective. She goes crazy because he has standards, and he communicates them not with arrogance, but with integrity. Most men think being attractive is about accessibility. They believe that saying yes to everything, being at her beck and call, or accepting any attention is the way to win her. But that is a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology, and it is exactly what ruins attraction before it even begins. Selectivity is magnetic because it creates value, but this value is not manufactured through games, manipulation, or ego. It is authentic. It is born from a life of self-mastery, from knowing who you are, what you want, and what you will or will not accept. An older man who embodies this quality does not need to prove himself through availability. He is not trying to impress. He is not desperate for attention. His choices are deliberate, and that deliberation signals to a younger woman that his time, energy, and interest are valuable. When a man is selective in this way, he becomes rare, and rarity, whether consciously recognized or not, is irresistible. Most younger men operate on impulse. They say yes to every invitation, they chase every flirtation, and they assume that quantity equals desirability. The problem with that approach is obvious. It erodes respect and diminishes attraction. When someone is always available, they signal low value. Conversely, a man with standards communicates that he is discerning, that he evaluates worth before he invests. This evaluation is not about superficiality. It is about character, energy, alignment, and integrity. She notices this immediately. She may test boundaries, she may flirt, she may withdraw, but the man who remains composed, consistent, and selective sets a standard that she cannot ignore. That standard becomes magnetic. Selection and standards also create psychological tension. Humans are wired to value what is scarce. When a man is selectively available, he is not rejecting her out of cruelty. He is communicating that his attention is earned, that it is not frivolous, and that it has meaning. This shifts the dynamic from one of casual interaction to one of investment. She begins to engage more thoughtfully because she senses that her own energy, attention, and actions are being evaluated. She begins to step up consciously or subconsciously because the interaction itself now carries weight. That weight creates fascination, intrigue, and attraction, unlike anything that comes from mere availability. It is important to clarify something here. Selectivity does not mean arrogance, coldness, or detachment. It does not mean ignoring her, being dismissive, or playing childish games. A man who is truly magnetic is warm, present, and kind, but he does not compromise his standards. He communicates interest and desire without desperation. He compliments without needing validation. He engages without overinvestment. That balance, approachable yet discerning, is rare. And that rarity is what makes him unforgettable. She senses that she is not just one of many, that her attention is valued, and that being part of his world requires authenticity, integrity, and energy that align with his own. That subtle calibration of boundaries is a masterclass in attraction. Selectivity also conveys confidence in a way nothing else can. When a man does not chase, does not overextend, and does not compromise, he demonstrates that he is already whole. He is not seeking approval or validation from external sources. He is already confident in his value, and that confidence communicates strength, security, and reliability. A younger woman is drawn to this energy because it contrasts sharply with the volatility, neediness, and insecurity she encounters so often in men her own age. She notices immediately that this is not someone she can take for granted, and that awareness fuels her investment and desire. Another layer to understand is alignment. Standards are not arbitrary rules or superficial checklists. They are reflections of a man's values, priorities, and vision for his life. When a man maintains standards, he is signaling that he has clarity about who he is, what he represents, and what he will allow into his life. This clarity resonates on a deep level. A younger woman recognizes that he is not easily swayed by fleeting attraction, charm, or manipulation. She senses that her engagement must be authentic and meaningful. That creates a dynamic of mutual respect, curiosity, and attraction that goes far beyond the physical or superficial. Perhaps the most profound aspect of selectivity is that it shifts the power of attraction in a way most men never understand. He does not need to force desire or manipulate attention. He does not need to overcompensate or act out of fear. By simply being selective and holding standards, he naturally creates pursuit. She begins to invest in ways that feel organic because she senses that her energy is being matched, evaluated, and respected. This is fundamentally different from chasing, begging, or performing. It is a form of attraction that is psychological, emotional, and even subconscious. She feels compelled to engage, not because she must, but because the interaction itself carries significance. Ultimately, selectivity and standards are the culmination of everything we have discussed so far: emotional stability, purpose, self-worth, and intellectual challenge. Without these foundations, selectivity becomes arrogance or coldness. With these foundations, selectivity becomes magnetic, compelling, and deeply attractive. It is the final piece of the puzzle, the element that transforms interest into fascination, attention into respect, and attraction into desire that cannot be ignored. So ask yourself, are you a man who is available to anyone at any time, or are you a man who knows your worth, understands your values, and holds standards that reflect your life, your priorities, and your integrity? Because the moment you embody true selectivity, you stop chasing, you stop performing, you stop seeking validation. She will notice, she will respect, and she will be drawn to a man whose attention is earned, whose energy is valuable, and whose presence is rare. Your standards are your power. Maintain them, communicate them, live them. When you do not just attract attention. You command respect, fascination, and desire that is unforgettable.